Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Drive Time. We are here on another Monday. What are we up to? March 24th. Crazy that we're already in March. Seems like it was just the holidays like last week. Time flies when you're having fun talking sports. So, anyway, welcome to another edition of Drive Time. We are back in our normal spot from 5 to 6 ish or whatever, depending on how long I ramble and get tired of rambling and all that good stuff. So, welcome to another show. And of course, as always start with what I'm wearing. Sometimes it's a jersey, sometimes it's going to be a sports shirt. But with baseball starting this week, there's only one choice. Of course, we're going with the City Connect from Cleveland. This is their little shirt version of the jerseys, and of course, it's Jose Ramirez on the back. But I'm not going to turn around because that's just weird. So no one wants to see the back of a chair anyway. So anyway, welcome to the show as we get ready close to baseball season. We'll talk a little bit baseball later on. But of course, where else are we going to start with? But a look in our rearview mirror. And I want to pull this up here. Hopefully, this will work here. I didn't get to talk too much about it when I was because we had a lot of stuff to talk about on that show when I was in Boston. I hadn't been to any of the places yet, and then of course last week we pretty much focused solely on what was going to be the fun of the March Madness and everything like that. So I didn't get to really talk about my experiences with the two ballparks I got to see up close and personal. So, of course, we're going to start with the hockey side of things here. I'm going to try to make this here a little bit bigger so you can see it. So, we went to TD Garden, saw a game there. Actually saw the Florida Panthers play, which was kind of interesting because that was right after the trade of Brad Marchand. I was kind of hoping that we get to see his first game in Boston, but he was still nursing the hamstring injury, and that is definitely still the case. So he's not even played for them yet. But did get to see TD Garden, which is an amazing arena in one sense. There's just a lot of history. They've done a good job, even though TD Garden's only been around for 25 years. It kind of has that feel still of the Boston Garden. All the banners inside are completely amazing and cool to see. They've done a good job with some of the history around the ballpark. So it's definitely a cool arena that I liked. The game was kind of weird because Boston started off really slow and Florida was just dominating, so it's kind of quiet in there. And then Florida scored one goal to make it 3-1, and you're like, okay, it's starting to get loud. Then they made 3-2. Then it started really getting loud, and then they tied it, and then it was like, okay, now I can really imagine this place during the playoffs and see what that would be like. So, overall, it's a really neat little arena. As you can see here, I keep a list of all my arenas that I've been in, and I put this in the solid. It's a solid top 10 arena. I've got it 7 now. These are all the arenas I've been to, and you'll see on my list here. Some are old, some are new. So these are just so like there's a lot of cities that technically, quote unquote, I haven't been back to, but it's just because when I was there, in my youth age as a kid, it was more, that arena doesn't exist anymore. So as you can see, my top stadium still I've ever been in all time is Chicago Stadium. The old Chicago Stadium was just crazy fun. It was an old barn. I do put one out to the Lenovo Center, so I should change this. I didn't realize I hadn't changed it yet, but Carolina's just a great place to see a hockey game. The tailgating before the game, it's truly like a college football atmosphere. It gets loud for any game. It doesn't matter if it's a regular season or playoff. Nationwide Arena here in Columbus is actually a really neat one. I like it. I put Bridgestone Arena in the top 5 because Nashville is just a fun city, and same thing, the crowd's always into the game. Madison Square Garden rounds out my top 5. The old Aud in Buffalo for any Buffalonians out there. I love the Aud. And then we get to some of the newer ones I've been to. Amalie Arena, the SAP Center in San Jose. They're all okay. The Civic Center was neat. The Joe back in the day at Detroit. I know for my Caps fans out there, Verizon Center, it's just kind of a bland arena to me. It's just okay. Same thing with the new United Center in Chicago. Don't really love it. And by far the worst arena that's still even being used today that I've been in is the Honda Center in Anaheim. Just nothing there. It's just, I don't know. I just did not like that arena at all. And the old Cap Center, even though it's unique in shape, just was kind of weird too. So a few comments here from Brian giving me a little love here, which appreciate that. And Sarah says, of course, have you been to Lenovo Center with a smiley question mark? Because yeah, been to a few Carolina games that she knows because she's been there with me. So so that's the hockey review side of Boston. Now, this will be kind of technical. I'm not sure if you can really count it or not because I did not see a baseball game at Fenway because baseball season had started, but we did do the tour of Fenway. So with that, I could only imagine what it would be like for a baseball game and the walking through there, the history of Fenway Park. It's just crazy good. There's not, even though, I would say the lower levels where you got some stanchions, there's probably some bad seats, but you're just so close to the field there. We got to go up and see the seats that are up there at the Green Monster, and those things are expensive as all hell. But man, what a place that would be to see a football game, or a football game. Well, you could see, I guess, a football game there. They did do a bowl game there, but to see a baseball game, they were talking about how they started off those seats up on top of Fenway for $50 because they weren't sure what the fanfare was going to be, and now those go on sale before anything, and they're all sold out, especially if it's like the Yankees in town or something like that. So I put Boston right up there at number 3, assuming if I saw a baseball game, it would be the same. My number 1 place is actually PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Just an amazing place to see a baseball game. The sight lines are great. The view of the city is really, really cool. Camden Yards in Baltimore, one of my favorites still. I just love going to Camden Yards. I do put the Jake, which I admit is probably a little bit homerish of me with Cleveland in my top 5 too, but it is also, if you like Camden Yards, you'd like Jacobs Field because it's the same. I know they call it the Progressive Field now, but to me, it's still the Jake. And then Busch Stadium in St. Louis, the view of the arch behind it, just a really, really cool place. I love Wrigley Field too. And all these ones that I have in here, there's no such thing as a bad baseball park. Well, except for when you get down to these bottom 3, the Riverfront Stadium, the Veterans Stadium, and Three River Stadium, the old cookie cutter stadiums of the 80s and 90s. Those two were just, those are some dumps. And the Oakland Coliseum is also a dump as well. But Fenway Park, amazing. Loved Boston. Really felt good there. I'd love to see more sporting events there. Devon, welcome. First time I think I've had you on the show, so congrats. Likes the Verizon Center for Caps. I do too. Don't get me wrong. The same thing on my arena list. I'll go back to that here real quick. It's not like any of these are bad. It's not like if I'm in DC for a hockey game, I'm happy as can be. And you can't beat the fact that for DC you can get on and off on the Metro, which is great. I've been spoiled from being going to a few Canes games, of having that experience of the tailgate added on to a hockey game. It's just something that's crazy, unique, and just off the wall crazy. So that's why I have them where I do. But yeah, it's not like it's an okay arena. I don't mind it, but I get kind of picky with my arenas. So what can I say? I'm a picky guy like that. But anyway, I didn't get a chance to do that. So I did want to real quickly kind of just go through my thoughts on Boston, but definitely a fun city. I would recommend it to anyone. The food, I ate my way through Boston very well. So you can't go wrong with any of the great food choices there. All right, so let me pull that down here for a little bit here. Stop sharing that. So we're going to do a little bit of a women's basketball update, and it's we're seeing some chalk on both the men's and women's side. There's some games that are being played today, so the women's Sweet 16 is not quite set yet, but all 4 number 1 seeds still alive. USC plays tonight. South Carolina, Texas just won earlier today, and UCLA, they're all in. All the number 2 teams are still alive. UConn plays tonight. The highest seed, quote unquote, left right now is San Diego State, but they play UConn. It's very possible when it's all said and done after today that the highest or the lowest high seed left, is whatever you want to call it, is going to be a 5, where the 4s and 5s have played each other. But there's a chance that all the 1s, 2s, and 3s could get through. I think when I last looked, I think Oklahoma was winning at the half here. Let me take a look at that score here real quick. But when I came on, they were winning anyway. So let's see here if they are still winning. And if so, then that's a 3 seed that's winning right now. Yeah, they're up 38-29 in the third. Maryland, Alabama, that's another 4-5 just started. NC State killed Michigan State by hitting a lot of 3s there today, and Texas rolled all over Illinois. So, haven't had many upsets on the women's side. But we do have some great matchups coming up for the Sweet 16. Looks TCU is going to play Notre Dame. I think that's going to be an interesting game. You got the number 1 seed UCLA taking on Ole Miss at 5. Texas is going to get Tennessee. That should be a really, really good game as well. I think that's going to be a fun one. If UNC wins tonight against West Virginia, could see a good old UNC Duke matchup, which I know a lot of people love seeing the Duke UNC matchup. So we'll see if that plays out. Hey, Gertie's making her appearance on the on drive time as always. So I knew sooner or later Cat would show up into here. South Carolina gets the winner of Alabama and Maryland. South Carolina's rolling. NC State is rolling. They're going to get the winner of LSU in Florida, and looks like it should be UConn. Assuming they win today, they're going to get Oklahoma. So, barring any upsets, the women's side is pretty chalky. I'm not terribly surprised by that. I didn't really see anyone that was maybe really capable of going, on a crazy upset bid on the ladies' side. I think where you're going to get to see some really good games is going to be this upcoming week when they get started back up again. Assuming nothing crazy happens there tonight. And on the men's side, we're kind of looking at this the same way, right? Finally, yesterday we got some really good games. We had our first buzzer beater with Maryland surviving Colorado State. The UConn Florida game was, a really good game this weekend too. That I enjoyed watching a lot of that. I want to pull up these comments here if I can find it here again. Um, there was a lot of talk on that, from that Maryland game of, did he travel on that last play? And I'm drawing a blank on the player's name now that had the ball that hit the winning shot with less than 2 seconds left. Being an official in ice hockey, granted, it's not basketball. There is no official in the world that was going to call that a travel. Just none. I mean, if you look at it in slow mo, did he probably travel? Sure. Do they really call travel? Yes, they call a little bit more, obviously, in the college game than what you see in the NBA game. But the amount of times that traveling gets called, period, anymore, in either of them is, kind of few and far and in between. And there is no way an official is going to call that. I mean, it's already still a tough shot. The defender's defended it well. He's got to go high off the glass to bank it in. An official's just not going to call travel there and basically take the game out of the kid's hands. It's just not going to happen there. So all this talk, oh, he traveled and blah blah blah. Like, no, just stop it. No official's going to call it. It was a hell of a shot to win the game. I'm glad we finally had a good buzzer beater. So I was glad yesterday. I think the games were finally there. But even on this men's side, right, we're still pretty chalky here. We've got all the number one still alive. The only number two that's out is St. John's, who lost to Arkansas, in just a game where they just Arkansas just was really physical, St. John's, and took it to them. There's two number six lefts in Old Miss, who beat a depleted Iowa State team, and BYU, who took out Wisconsin. That one was a bit of a surprise to me. But that's really, and then you got the 10 seed left in Arkansas. The crazy part of the Sweet 16, I think, in my view, is looking at it by conference. Look, I was one that thought that the SEC should not have gotten 14 teams in. I thought it was a bit much, but sure enough, they set a record. 7 of those 14 teams are in the Sweet 16. The Big Ten has 4 teams in the Sweet 16, and the Big 12 has 4 teams left. And then the ACC happens to have maybe I'd probably put, based off what I saw from this first weekend, the team with the best shot of winning this in Duke. So there's only 4 conferences make up the Sweet 16. That's the first time since 1985. Also, that the Sweet 16 has been made up of nothing but power conference schools. So, and really, 15 of the 16 are 3 conferences, between the SEC, the Big 10, which I always joke is the Big 264, and then the Big 12. So a lot of chalk in this year's men's side. But I think what it is going to set up for is a fantastic Thursday, Friday next week. We just got some great matchups. You got Auburn against Michigan, which I think is going to be a good battle. Michigan comes in, maybe it's one of the hottest teams in, from winning the Big Ten tournament, going against an Auburn team. Michigan State against Ole Miss, that's going to also be a really good game as well. You got Florida going up against Maryland. Can Maryland, keep themselves in the game with their shooting? Texas Tech against Arkansas. So either way, we know at least one SEC school is going to be out after that game. But that one will be interesting to see how Texas Tech can hold off this Arkansas team that seems to be finding themselves as well. Duke, Arizona, I think that's going to be an interesting game too. If Duke is going to, can they keep up playing the way they are against an Arizona team that I think is playing pretty well right now too. You got Alabama against BYU. I think Alabama is going to probably win that one pretty convincingly. Houston against Purdue. Maybe Purdue can give them a game, but I think that's another one too where Houston's going to come out pretty easily. And I think what's probably going to be the best game of all these is that Tennessee-Kentucky game. That's just got close, great game. I hope writing on it. So we'll see how all these play out. But that is your Sweet 16, and how everything is looking going into it. So where does next week go? We'll see. But right now, there's a lot of chalk in here for sure. We'll see if any of these number 1 seeds lose any footing. Now, I know that everyone loves, the NCAA tournament, and that's great and everything like that. But there is another tournament going on, and it's the NIT. and my dearly beloved, the Kent State University Golden Flashes, defeated Stanford last night to advance to the Elite Eight of the NIT. So I got to give my alma mater some love because we don't get a lot of stuff to brag about at Kent State. So whenever something does come up, damn it, I'm going to brag a little bit of Kent State, and you guys are just going to have to suck it up and deal with it. Sorry, but you know. Jalen Sullinger had his career high 34 points. They go into Stanford. They win 77-75. So it's a nice win against Power 5 school in the ACC. Well, I guess, yeah, it is the ACC, right? That's where they went to. So they next get Loyola Chicago, who upset San Francisco in San Francisco's barn. So I was a little bit surprised by that. So now they get to go to Loyola Chicago on Wednesday. In the first round, they beat St. Bonaventure 75-56 going into their barn and winning that game. That game was by far their best game that they've had all year. And I was watching that game and I was like, where the hell's this team been all year? Because if this team would have played like that, they might have had a chance to beat Akron and make it into the tournament. But here they are, 24-11 into the Elite Eight of the NIT. So as always, I have to give my Golden Flashes their proper share of love, just because just doesn't happen enough. So there you have it. There's a little bit of our basketball recap. But it's time to get to what I love most, and that's time to do a drive to the net. Now, I did have an opportunity, and there was a national championship game last night. We'll get into the breakdown of the game, but it's time for a special edition of Jose Can You Sing, because there was a national anthem. And remember, when I started doing this new list, the rule was that it had to be a big game and that I had to see it live. So that'd be like a conference championship game, or that would be, whatever, and once we get to the playoffs, NBA playoff game, NFL playoff game, you name it, has to be some type of that game. It's just not going to be every single one. So there was a national anthem last night. It was done by Ashley Wangabe. She did the national anthem for the women's ice hockey national championship game. She did an okay job. I gave her overall 39 out of 50. So again, since I started doing this, and there's been some requests of, well, what about this person from going back? I'm not going back in time from before I had the show, because that wouldn't be fair. There's so many great anthems out there that had been done over the course of time that just we're going to stick with since I started making this list. Now, there is my Super Bowl one here. That one I went through each and every one. Whitney Houston, of course, is the top of that one. So you can kind of see some of those. But we've talked about these ones before on the show. So that one I did do some research on to go back to every single Super Bowl that's had a national anthem. Now for here, so we just had the Four Nations ones, the Canadian one, which was by far that's probably going to end up being the worst one of all these throughout the course of time. So she got a 39, 8 for excitability. She did a good job there. Her range was good, 9. She did has the good old Randy Jackson used to say on American Idol, she's a little pitchy dog. She's a little pitchy. So she only got 7 there. Speed was okay. It was a little slow for my liking, but did okay. And overall style was an 8. So she gets a 39. So she'd be in second place of these on here. But, we don't get to do this that often. So always love doing a little quick Jose Can You Sing from that. So we have that, and that's that. Let's get into the actual game itself. It was between Wisconsin and Ohio State, to no surprise from anyone. These have been the best 2 teams in women's college hockey now for 5 years straight. These 2 have flip-flopped each year. It looked early on that maybe Ohio State was actually going to be able to go back-to-back, because they were up 3-1 in this game. In the second period, Wisconsin chipped away, got a goal in the second, and then they're up 3-2 going into the last minute of play. Wisconsin gets a power play for Ohio State having too many ladies on the ice. From that power play, they're not scoring, but they generate some pressure, and a Ohio State player covers up the puck with her hand, trying to get it outside, because if she doesn't do it, they probably score a goal anyway. But as a player cannot put their hand over the puck in the crease. If you do that, it's actually awarded a penalty shot. Now, it wasn't caught live because there's so much going on. The ref's trying to get in there and see it. And by the time she gets in there to see it, the puck is already kind of out of the crease. But it is a play that in the NCAA rules, a coach can challenge it to be reviewed. The Wisconsin coach did ask for that, and it was reviewed. And the correct call was made to award Wisconsin a penalty shot with 18.7 seconds left. I love it. The Wisconsin coach just says, who wants to take the shot? One player raises her hand, and she goes in. Last name is Sims. I can't remember her first name. I got to try to look it up here, and I misplaced it. She makes this amazing deke move, just crazy good, gets the goalie out of position, and and puts it right in behind her to tie the game up at 3 with 18 seconds left in the third period. So we go to overtime, and just like if you're familiar with the NHL playoffs, when you get to overtime in for a championship game of this level, it is 20 minutes. So you put 20 minutes on the clock and you go till somebody scores. There's no shootouts. There's no 3-on-3 or anything like that. They do the ice surface. And these type of overtimes usually have a way of going. They either teams play really conservative because they don't want to make the mistake that's going to cost them the game or a championship. And those are the games that can get into your second, third, fourth, fifth overtimes at times. Or teams just come out guns a-blazing, chances left and right, and you're like, this game is not going to take that long at all. And that was this one. The first couple minutes, there were chances for both teams, and then sure enough, the lady that gets the penalty shot goal ends up getting the overtime national championship winner with 2:49 into the overtime after both teams had traded. A really good shot from the point. The goalie for Ohio State gives up probably a rebound that she would like to have back, puts it right on Sim's stick, and she buries it. So it's Wisconsin's third title in 5 years. Like I said, the other two were Ohio State. This is the third year in a row they met for the women's national title. The last two games were 1-0 thriller games. This one did not disappoint either with the 1-0. The player of the tournament, Casey O'Brien, she's likely going to be the #1 pick in the PWHL next year. And Layla Edwards, she had a hat trick for Wisconsin the first game. Joy Dunn is a stud for Ohio State too. You're going to see when the next draft comes up because a lot of these were seniors. The Wisconsin Ohio State is going to be heavily drafted in the PWHL for next year. So that was something to keep an eye on. That was really a really good game. I enjoyed watching it. The ladies played their hearts out. Women's hockey is just exploding in the U.S. and it's going to be interesting. I kind of feel like the women's hockey right now is kind of similar to where ladies college basketball was in the Pat Summitt heydays. You had Tennessee and UConn, and everyone else was kind of catching up. And I kind of feel like that is right now where women's hockey is. You've got Wisconsin and Ohio State, and you have everybody else. And I'm not really sure, and what's weird though is, of course, with this, you've got NILs, and I know it sounds weird, but yes, the NILs are a factor in women's hockey, and the two top teams with the most NIL money are Wisconsin and Ohio State. So they have that ability to pick players off from some of these developing teams that end up, developing into good players and then adding them for their junior and senior years. There's Gertie. Say hi, Gertie. Come on, show your face. There you go. There's Gertie, everyone. So we have to keep that in mind too. It's going to be interesting to see how the teams, make up for that difference, if they can make up for that difference. And I don't know if they're going to be able to. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out, because back when you had these other teams, they just, the NIL money wasn't a thing like it is now. So we'll see how that all goes. Then we also had here last night, they announced the men's hockey field is a little bit further behind because there's only 16 teams that make it. So you've got 16 teams that go into the tournament. So they will have their first round, and that these regionals will happen actually this weekend. Then they take a weekend off because they don't go up against the same time as the men's basketball and the women's basketball Final Fours. They stay away from that. So then in 2 weeks is when the Frozen Four will actually complete. So they go by regions. You've got Manchester region, which has the #1 overall seed. That is Boston College. They're going up against a school called Bentley. This is their first ever appearance in the tournament. They've been a D1 school since 1999. A lot of years they struggled. They won the American East Coast Hockey Association. They went 23-14-2 this year. So congrats to Bentley for making their first appearance into the tournament. It's always fun when you see one of these up and coming hockey programs, because it's a good sign for the sport when you don't just get the same teams over and over again into it. So congrats to Bentley for making it. They're going to play in one game, and then the winner of that game will get, which will honestly probably be Boston College. Boston College is by far the best team. They're my pick to win it all this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan State was able to pull it off too. But I think Boston College is going to be the one to come home with the title. But we'll see. They're going to get the winner of Providence and Denver. Denver is the returning champ, so they are defending their title. They should beat Providence. I feel pretty good that they'll win that game, but then they get a tough matchup against Boston College. We'll see how that goes. The Fargo region features the number 14 Western Michigan, who had a great year this year, but they get a tough team in Minnesota State, who's got a really good goalie. So that one's going to be one to keep an eye on, where there could be a possible upset early on. And then you got a battle of two powerhouses, Minnesota and UMass. That should be a really, really good game. I've got no clue who's going to win that one. It's just going to be fun to watch. Maine gets it's number 3 seed. They get Penn State. Penn State is another team that hasn't been in a lot, so they've kind of built up their hockey program, and they're starting to show that the fruits of that now by making these tournaments and stuff. They go up against UConn, another team that's kind of a little bit newer to it. They've made it a couple years, but this year this UConn team is probably one of their better ones. They go up against Quinnipiac, who's won the national title a couple of years ago. So they're going up against one of the all-time powerhouses. But I think UConn's got a pretty good chance. The best region, in my view, is this Toledo region. You've got 4 just really amazing teams. Michigan State's going up against Cornell. They should come out with that game okay. And then talk about powerhouses. You got Boston U playing against Ohio State. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a really good game. I've got no clue who's going to come out on top on that one, but we'll see. It's going to be fun. There's a lot of interesting players to watch if you like college hockey. Albin Bogia, sophomore goalie from Maine, 23-7-6 with a 1.76 goals against average. He currently right now is not drafted. He's up for the draft this year, so I got a funny feeling somebody's going to take him. Aiden Fink, another sophomore, he's got 52 points, 23 goals, 29 assists. He is a Nashville Predator draft pick, so it's going to be fun seeing how he does. Joey Maldwin went from 5 goals his freshman year to 27 years as a sophomore for UConn. He is a draft pick of San Jose, so he improved leaps and bounds. A player to watch for Boston College, and this is for my Washington Capitals fans out there, is Ryan Leonard. He is likely going to be the Hobie Baker winner, which is basically the season MVP. And he has had a heck of a year for Boston College. And he is a Boston College draft pick. So those are some of your players that you're going to want to watch and keep an eye out for. I think it's going to be a fun tournament. Again, that starts this weekend. The games are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just similar to what they do there. Most of them I think are earlier. There's a 2 and a couple 5 o'clock starts. So should be fun. Should be a good tournament. I think you're going to see a lot of good hockey, and it's always a good time for sure. Now, of course, we have to talk the one and only Ovie, and this is getting a little bit interesting. I thought going in probably about a month or so ago, it was pretty much going to be a slam dunk that Ovie was going to break this year, and now we're starting to get where it's getting a little bit close. And the reason for that is he's been for the season, he's at 35 goals in 54 games, which is like a 0.67 goals per game average. But the last couple of weeks, he's kind of more on a goal every game, which is 0.5. So it's kind of bringing that number down. So he only scored 1 goal this last week, and like I said, he's been on this goal every other game, which normally if you're looking at it as a 39-year-old, you're like, that's still pretty damn good, which it is. But when you're trying to break the record this year, we're getting close to where it's getting a little iffy. He needs 6 to tie Gretzky and 7 to break the record. He is currently at 888, which and he wears number 8, and he's known as the Great 8. So it is kind of a unique little spot where he's sitting at right now. He's still on pace to score 42 to 43 goals, so that is 7 more that he would score. So as of right now, he is still projected to beat the record. But he is projected to beat that record in the last game of the regular season, which is on the road April 17th in Pittsburgh. Let me pull up real quick their schedule. Come back over here, because I did want to go over for anyone that is a Caps fan, if you're in the area of looking at, well, hey, maybe I want to try to get tickets for one of these home games to hopefully see this record. It's going to be hard, and the reason for that is because their last 2 games are on the road. They play April 17th is the last game of the season at Pittsburgh. April 15th, they are up in Long Island. Their last home game is actually Sunday against Columbus. On the 13th and the 12th, they are actually in Columbus. And then on Thursday, April 10th, they have a home game against Carolina. If he's going to have to get hot to really have a chance to break one of those records. Like I said, right now he is still on pace to end it, on that last day of the regular season. But I just remember playoff goals do not count. So like if he is tied at the end of the regular season, we wait till next year for him to officially break it. And don't worry, he's going to play next year if that happens. And I'm kind of secretly wondering, would the NHL like him to only be tied at the end of the regular season? So then they've got all off season, and you can guarantee whatever the Caps' first game is, and the first probably 3 or 4 games will be on TNT or ESPN or whomever. Like those will be must see TV, but it give them a chance to really build for next season if they wanted to do that. Now they have got no control over it, and it's not like the Caps are struggling. They've won 5 of their last 7. So even though he's not scoring goals, he's scoring points. He's got 7 assists in these games. So basically, it's a case of the Caps are taking what they're giving him. And look, as he gets closer and closer to the records, there's 2 things. One, the goalies don't want to be on the poster. They don't want to be on the video that's going to show every 2 seconds showing, hey, here's the guy that gave up the goal. 2, teams don't want to be on it. They don't want to be the team that gives up those goals. So as he's getting closer and closer to the record, it's going to be harder and harder for him to score. It's just not uncommon because he's chasing the record. It's not like where he's got it and then it's set and then it just kind of all falls into play. So I think some of those things are what's kind of coming in. I've been watching a lot of these games over the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's a question of him like getting tight or anything like that. It's just teams are focusing in on him a little bit more, and he's doing what he always has been able to do, which is then, okay, they're coming in on me. Let me go ahead then and pass the puck to somebody else to score, and that's what the Caps are doing because they're still winning games. It's not that they aren't winning games. So, but again, right now, should beat it last game of the regular season, but it's going to be close. There's no guarantees, of course, on any of this, so we'll see how that all plays out for Ovie. But if you're an Ovie fan, don't worry. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's still got a really good chance to do it, and we'll definitely be okay. So I need to take a drink real quick, so I'm going to play this little thing here. Let's see if this works. Let's see. Then I was able to take a drink without you guys having to actually watch me take a drink. So is that kind of we're getting better at this thing, I promise you. So let me do this here now. So I want to dive into where these standings are at because we are really getting down to nitty gritty time. Most teams have 10, 11, or 12 games left, and so where we're at standings wise is really starting to kind of get ready for the playoffs, and you can kind of see where things are at here. So this, of course, courtesy of the lovely NHL. So we're waiting for that here to come on up here. Sometimes it comes up quickly like it was on the earlier stuff, but now that I really want this one to come up, it's taking a sweet time for it coming up here. So we'll just go through them. So again, if you're not familiar with how the NHL playoffs work, it goes like this. You have your divisions, you've got your Atlantic Division, Metro Division. Then you have out west, the Central and the Pacific Division. With those, the top 3 teams are guaranteed to get in. So there's not like a 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7. The top 3 teams get in. 2 plays 3, and then the top team gets the 2 best teams after that, the wild card teams. There it goes. It finally popped up for me. So in the Atlantic right now, you've got Florida, who's been on a little bit of a slide. Some of that's because Makachuk is still out. He's probably not going to be ready until the playoffs. Brad Marchand still not in. Ekblad, one of their top defenders, got caught with a substance in his system, so he's out for the rest of the regular season. So they're kind of struggling a little bit to the finish line, but I'm not really that worried about the defending champs. They're going to get in. Where they end up seeding really probably doesn't even matter that much to them. And these 3 teams are all going to make it. Florida, Toronto, Tampa Bay, they're all going to make it. They're all just battling for position to see who ends up where. 4 points separates them right now. But those 3 teams are definitely going to get in. In the Metro, the Washington Capitals have officially clinched a playoff spot. They are in. They're sitting at 102. Carolina is second in division with 90 points. They're not going to catch them. There's only 12 games left. They're 12 points behind. That basically means that Carolina would have to win 6 more games than the Washington Capitals. That's just not going to happen. So if you're a Washington Capitals fan, you are going to finish number 1. And as you can see, you are 13 points ahead of the Florida Panthers, which means that the Washington Capitals will finish with the best record in the East. What that means for them is that they are going to get the team that is in the number 2 spot in the wild card, and we'll get into the wild card later. Carolina is pretty much the same thing. They're locked into the 2 spot. They are going to host whoever finishes third in the Metro. That is likely going to be New Jersey, because New Jersey is sitting there at 80 points. The next closest team that actually plays in the Metro is the Rangers here at 74. They're 6 points back. But both teams only have 9 games left. That's just a lot of points to make up in 9 games, because the most points that they can get is 18. So you can just see, like, a team's got to go on a really good roll, and the other team's really got to go south in order for anything there to change and have anything happen like that. So Ottawa feeling pretty good too about this team making it, because they are now 5 points ahead of that line for being in or out of the playoffs, which means that Ottawa will likely get whoever wins the Atlantic Division, and your Washington Capitals are going to get whoever sits here. And as you can see right now, it's the Montreal Canadiens, but the Rangers are only a point behind. The New York Islanders have come out of nowhere. They're only 2 points behind. Columbus has been fading here lately. They're 4 points back. Detroit, same thing. They're fading. They're 5 points back. Boston, they are only 6 points back, which are like, hey, okay, that doesn't sound bad, but they've already played 72 games, which means they've only got 10 games left compared to some of these other teams that have more games left. So it's just going to be really hard for them to gain any ground. Same thing with Pittsburgh. They're also sitting there at 69, but they've only got 10 points left. You got all these teams ahead of you. It's just really hard to leapfrog that many teams with this little time left. So my gut says it's either going to be Montreal, the Rangers, the Islanders, and maybe still Columbus. I would not count these guys out just yet for one of these teams getting into this spot. The key that you can see, the Rangers seem like they're sitting pretty at 74 points, and that's probably a team, if you're a Washington fan, maybe you don't want to play, but they've got 71 games. All these other teams have 69 games, which means they have what we call games in hand. And games in hand are nice if you win them, because that it gives you a chance to leapfrog the other team, and they can't win a game in response. So if you're Montreal, the Islanders, and Columbus, that's why I'm still kind of keeping Columbus into this picture, because they do have those 2 games in hand on the Rangers. So for the Rangers, they've got to win. Probably you're looking at, they're going to have to win, at minimum 6 to 7 of their last. What they have here, they have 11 games left. They're going to have to win 6 or 7 of those, and then hope that these teams that have games in hand don't win at like a 700% clip, because if they do, they're going to catch them. So the East is still set up for, basically it's a race for one spot, because I think these other 7 are pretty locked in. Like I said, the Atlantic, you're going to see maybe these 3 teams might switch spots, but they're in, and it's just going to be a question of who gets the one to face Ottawa, and the other 2 are going to play each other. Out west, it's kind of similar. Winnipeg is kind of in the same boat that your Washington Capitals are in. They're sitting there pretty at 100 points, and they are going to easily win the Central. They're 8 points up on Dallas. That's just, again, it's just too big of a hole to climb. So Dallas and Colorado are going to face each other in the first round of the playoffs, which is crazy, because that could be easily the Western Conference final, and one of those teams is going to be out in the first round. Vegas is looking pretty good. They've got a 5-point lead out in the Pacific. And then surprise, 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 you got Edmonton and LA sitting there at 2 and 3. The next closest team from the Pacific Division is Calgary. So again, Edmonton and LA, they are playing each other in the first round. There's no doubt about it. And Edmonton and LA, this will make 4 years in a row now that they'll be playing each other in the first round. As it stands right now, Vegas is going to get Minnesota. They're pretty far up here. The St. Louis Blues, ladies and gentlemen, might make the playoffs this year, which is crazy. Looking at where these standings were at the quote unquote All-Star break, which was the Four Nations tournament. St. Louis was 6 points out then. They now have a 4-point lead over Calgary and Vancouver. And Utah, these are the other 3 teams that are in there, but this is starting to, 4 points is getting pretty big now. St. Louis has played 72 games, so they only have 10 games left. Calgary has 69. So Calgary has 3 games in hand. Vancouver has 2 games in hand, and Utah has 2 games in hand. So if they win those 2 games, you can see this tightens up again real quickly. But games in hand are nice, but you have to win them. Sarah's asking, are you doing a bracket prediction closer to the playoffs? Of course we will. And if you want to come on that show, Sarah, you can be the special hockey guest. I'm going to try to line up a panel for that one if I can. But yeah, we will definitely be doing that. Let's see, probably looking at 2 weeks, I think would be when that one would break down for that. So there you have it. Those are where the standings are at in the NHL. So 10 games left, 12 games left for most of these teams. It's going to be a fun ride to the end between Ovie and these playoff battles and these playoff positionings. It's going to be fun to as we get closer and closer to the end of the season here for sure. All right, so it's time to go down the road here a little bit. We've done our hockey segment, and there's a little bit of fun here that I want to have with the on the NFL free agent side. And there's not a lot of big names left. Obviously the two big names that are still out there is of course Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. And where do they end now at this point in time? Because there's really not many landing spots right on this quarterback rodeo for them to land. The question is going to be, does Pittsburgh really want to start the season with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback and then maybe try to get one in the draft? My son's a huge Pittsburgh fan. I know that that's his hope of what they want them to do. I don't know if that's what Pittsburgh's going to do or not. You know, what does Cleveland do with this whole Deshaun Watson fiasco? And they're sitting there at 2. Are they going to take a quarterback at 2? Do they try to get someone to go with them? I don't know what they're going to do. Or do these two just kind of wait for that first big quarterback injury of the year to happen, which we know will happen, and then go for somebody there after that? I think that's a possibility as well, that neither one of these two sign at this point in time until we get further along and we get towards where we're actually into some training camps and some until we get into some exhibition games, which is, I know, way far away. So do they just sit there and see what happens and let one of these guys then take one of these spots and then feel like they may have got some leverage? Because right now, I don't really know if they've got much leverage to get a big deal, where they might if a team loses their quarterback, on a bad injury. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go. The other big names still out there, J.K. Dobbins, showed last year he does still have it in him to be an effective running back, but the injuries just killed this poor guy. It's just it'd be amazing to see what he could do if he could actually, stay healthy for 16 games, but it just doesn't happen for him. So where does he land? A lot of folks are saying that he could end up in Cleveland, but we'll see if that's where he ends up. But Cleveland does need a running back to go with Jerome Ford or whatever else they decide to do. Nick Chubb is still sitting out there, coming off the injuries that he's coming off of. It'd be interesting to see if anyone takes a flyer on him. Stephon Diggs, boss man BJ always loves Stephon Diggs. I mean, he just loves him as a player. Where does he end up? I've heard some rumblings out there about that he might end up in Dallas, which would be an interesting mix to go with all those egos out there. I'm not sure how well that would work, but it would be must-see TV when it comes to watching him try to get along with Dak and get along with CC. So that's another interesting one. Keenan Allen's still out there, an aging wide receiver, but he's still got some talent. He showed that last year. Where does he end up? Does he go somewhere that could be a good fit for him and a good fit for everybody else? So I'm not sure, but those, that's really all that's really left as far as big names go. I mean, there's some other names out there, but those are the big ones that I think would be interesting to see where they go, especially if you're into fantasy football. Those are guys that I think at least would maybe pique your interest when it comes time to draft them for fantasy football, of course. But who knows who's going to end up where. We do, of course, also have baseball starting this week. Thursday is when we finally get to the home opener stateside. The Cubs and Dodgers, of course, played a 2-game series over in Japan, with the Dodgers already off to a 2-0 start. But we get going on to that next on Thursday. I'm going to wait next week. We'll do a baseball preview show where we'll break down predictions for the winners of the divisions and stuff like that. Kind of like to see how these rosters all shake out. Teams are just now kind of announcing who their final rosters are over these next couple of days. So I'd like to see how the rosters set up, and then next week we'll break down the divisions. We'll break down some who do we think is going to finish where in each division and have some fun. And then just a little sneak peek here for the Tuesday night show for Ben, that the baseball preview show will be tomorrow on theirs too. So they're going to do it Sideline Junkie style as well, where they will break down their thoughts for the upcoming baseball season. So it's getting that time of fun year for if you're a baseball fan. So we'll all have our shows where we're going to break down who we like where for baseball, and it's going to be getting to that fun time of year. But this is the question I want to kind of ask, and I think it's a good one. Are the Dodgers the new evil empire? There's a lot, during the George Steinbrenner days where it was always the New York Yankees were the evil empire, right? And then they kind of, that they wore it and they acknowledged it, and I think they even had some fun with it. But the New York Yankees aren't even near the top as far as spending money goes. According to Fangraphs, the LA Dodgers, their projected salary for this year is 390 million. The Mets are second at 332. You got the Phillies third at 289 million, and then the Yankees at 287. So the Yankees aren't even the top two anymore. They're fifth as far as spending the most money. So is and of course they're the defending champs and they have spent a lot of money. What's also crazy to think, looking at this, according to them, for their committed salaries in 2026, they are 96 million over any other team. And if you look at the 2027 committed salaries, they are 150 million over any team. So it is interesting to see where they're going to, where they come in on all this. Sarah says the Yankees will always be evil no matter what. But I mean, I'm slightly biased too. Well, yeah, there's a little bit of biasness, but that's a personal bias, nothing that we'll get into here on the show. So, and what's interesting is looking at the flip side of these, right? You've got the lowest spending team is the Miami Marlins at 70 million. You got the A's at seven, whatever we are. I think they're only just called the Athletics. They can't be called the Oakland Athletics. They don't want to be called the Oakland Athletics or the Sacramento Athletics, whatever athletics you want to call them, at 76 million. You got the Chicago White Sox at 81 million, and Chicago White Sox now have, I think they now had 5 pitchers this month that need Tommy John surgery. So good luck if you're a Chicago White Sox fan out there. That's not looking good. Pittsburgh is next at 88 million. You got Tampa at 90 million, and then coming in next is the AL division, Central Division winning Cleveland Guardians at 103 million, which is always interesting. The Guards are always in the bottom 5-10 on these salary lists, but yet they manage to be able to compete and win division titles from now every, a lot more than all these other teams that are in the bottom of the standings. So how this all plays out, we'll see. But it is interesting looking at the money. Of course, you got the Dodgers and the Mets, and these two teams have both been willing to spend the money, and so is Philly. But Philly's got a title for it. The Dodgers have a title for it. What will happen with the Mets is going to be interesting to see, with all the money that they've spent, and the Yankees. And the Yankees got their own set of injury problems going into the year too. Little sad news, especially if you're a Washington Nationals fan. Bob Carpenter, who has been doing the TV side of things for 20 years, did announce today that this is going to be his last season as the Nats TV guy, which makes sense because it's going to be the last year where they've got to be set with Masson. So you've got all that, to see how that plays out. But a guy famous for saying "see you later" after every home run will be officially saying "see you later" after this season. And I always liked Bob. I thought he called a good game on TV. The sad part, I think, for Bob, and I can't remember the guy's name that's with him now, but a lot of times they get him with these guys, and to me they homer him up a little bit too much, where it's just look, I like a good. I don't mind a little bit of homerism when you're the home team's broadcast crew, but I like you to at least somewhat call it with what you see it. And for whatever reason, the Nats color guys have been, to me, very, very homerific when it comes to how they go about it. And Ben says Kevin Francis. Thank you, because I could not remember the new guy's name, because who was it beforehand? I can't remember who he was with. Was it Martinez or something like that? That dude was just always everything. The Nats could never do anything wrong, which was always funny to me. So, but I do love Bob Carpenter. I think he calls a great game. So it'll be sad to see him go. Be interested to see, does he get the love going around to some of these places like Sam Rosen for the New York Rangers? This is his last year as teams have come into Madison Square Garden. They've kind of done a little, farewell for him. I think you'll see that with Bob Carpenter too, because he seems to be very well liked in the baseball community, and that's good for him, because I do enjoy the games that he calls. So there you have it, folks. So we've hit everything here that I want to hit on today. So enjoy the baseball talk. I'm getting made fun of right now by my wife and son. I can't tell exactly what they're saying, but I know they're saying something about me. So I'm sure I'll get an earful over something that I said that they're laughing at when I officially wrap up the show, because I can tell that something is being said. So I'm bringing them into the show now, whether they want it or not. So I'm at least mentioning that I'm being looked at and ridiculed here as we end the show. So which is fun. So with that being said, I thank you all for listening and participating in the chat. It definitely makes the show go a little bit easier as we roll through here. We got a big week here coming up here. So like, as you already heard on the Tuesday night fight, you're gonna see the guys talking about some baseball. Of course, you also got the Thursday night throwdown, and you got the great gentleman Jack at the passenger seat on Wednesday, and I think he's got one of the kids from the Ashburn Extreme, the goaltender for their team, who won the state title, and now they get to go play in nationals, which I think they're in Madison, Wisconsin, if I remember right. We've got that's this coming weekend. There's a girls U19 tier 2, which is coming here to the Cleveland area, but that's in 2 weeks. So all these national titles start going on for USA Hockey, for the youth side of it. Most of them are this weekend or the following weekend. So we'll hopefully they'll do well, and I get to see some of the girls U19 stuff, because I'll be supervising some officials for that. So that's enough for now. But as I always say, make sure that you hug your loved ones, tell them that you love them, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. But hopefully we'll see you next Monday here on Drive Time. And until then, everyone take care.